How's it going, everybody? Wherever you are, taking in the Front Runner Football Podcast. It's the first of the brand new week as we head into the second week of the new month known as July. And we're doing things a little differently today. Veli Limyandu couldn't join us, but we roped in one Edelbert Dinha, who joins us via Zoom and makes up my panel. That also includes Jonty Mark and Mazola Molefe, gents who have said welcome to the show many a time. So I'll take this opportunity to say welcome to Eddie. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Kamo, and it's good to be here, man.
Great. So let's start, gents, at the beginning as far as some of the big news is concerned. The Seema, the man who had been working wonders at Celtic under strange conditions, him and the players kind of galvanized and were able to, make things on the pitch look like there's nothing wrong in the back office. He's decided to cut his ties with Celtic, and shortly after that, he was in a new job already, and that was with Chippa United, Jonty Mark. Has he hopped from the pan into the fryer, or, has he upgraded himself? How do you see this one?
Well, he's definitely hopped into a fire because Chippa United are not exactly known for keeping coaches for very long. Chippa and Benghazi seems to be quite trigger happy when it comes to removing coaches that he's not happy with. And we saw, obviously, Rani Mokwena, the latest incumbent, on a sort of loan deal, which we commented on here before, which was a bit odd because it was kind of, you usually see players loaned, you don't usually see coaches loaned to other clubs. So he was there on loan, and then Chippa decided not to carry on with that. I guess it's for Seema. He was came through Celtic as an assistant to Steve Compella, learned all he can from Steve, who's obviously one of the more respected coaches in the country. Did very well at Celtic, I thought. But for him, I guess it's a new challenge. He goes to the Eastern Cape. Maybe he can be the man to make himself a household name at Chippa, whereas most coaches kind of come and go. Maybe he can be the guy who ends up actually creating a legacy there and building a Chippa team that can have some stability, because I think that's what that club are really craving, because there's just no stability when you have one coach after another. It's impossible to get the kind of stability you need to challenge for honours, and all you're doing really is scrapping around trying to stay in the top division. So I'd like to see Seema succeed. He's a very nice guy, and he did a very good job at Celtic, bringing those young players through, and obviously in difficult circumstances with the financial problems that they've had, which hopefully can be resolved with new ownership. But yeah, I think for him it's a good move to test himself. I quite like the fact that he's gone there. However, unsafe the Chippa job is.
Mazola, I guess he could argue that he'll be better resourced in terms of maybe playing personnel and, the cushy arrangement of being able to get players from a certain club on loan or willy-nilly coming into the club. Those things probably helped make his decision.
Yeah, and maybe the fact that he'll get his salary guaranteed to some degree. Whereas at Celtic, I think he'd been fighting a losing battle. You know what I mean? That's a club that, from playing for Orlando Pirates, if I'm not mistaken, he played with you, Eddie, at Pirates, did he not? Or was it before your time at Orlando Pirates?
No, he did.
So So Leshonolo moved from Orlando Pirates to Celtic as a player, captain, and then subsequent to that, staying within the structures at the club, learning the ropes to some degree. I mean, he's been at the highest level for quite some time with Coach Steve, Ernst Middendorp, Clinton Larson, albeit in the development structures and that. So it's a club that is close to his heart. But when a man resigns from a club that he's been at for so long, then he's just about had enough, and to make it, I don't know if to say make it worse is the right term to use, but to some degree, like we've been saying, he's jumped from one sort of difficult working condition into another one. But at the same time, yes, Chippa have given him a 3-year contract. The main thing now, I suppose, is just to stabilize the team and make sure that they do not get relegated. That's the priority. And then from then on, let's see what he does the remaining, couple of seasons, if at all. I mean, some people are joking around when I posted the story on social media. They said, well, it's probably not a 3-year contract. It's a 3 months contract, But look, Lekonolo is a strong character. He can hold his own. He's been top flight coach for 2 years now, and a whole lot, many more years behind him as an assistant or in the development structures, and even more years as a captain of 2 big clubs in South African football. But let's not downplay it. He's going into a very difficult club, a club that's had 22 coaches. He becomes the 22nd coach in 8 years. So that just gives you the story there. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's kind of crazy, but let's see.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Such a high turnaround of coaches, Eddie. I mean, the man who's heading into this job. It's not going to be easy sailing because obviously he needs to get in there and hit the ground running with them only being 3 points ahead of the team that is in the relegation playoff zone. So safety is not guaranteed for Chippa United, and becomes that much more of a good project for him to kind of nail down if he does manage to help them save the drop and, build up some currency with the chairman and be able to invest and progress next season.
Listen, for him to be to take that chance, to go and coach Chippa United, is it a good thing? Listen, I don't know. I mean, we have seen a couple of good coaches going there, doing the best for Chippa, and in the end, their contracts get terminated. I mean, as for Seema, yes, we know that he's a very good coach. We know what he has done for Celtics. He has turned it around. But for me, for him to jump that ship to say, okay, let me go to Chippa United, when you have seen a couple of good coaches that have gone there and doing great things for Chippa United, and then in the end, the contract is terminated. So for Seema to take that chance and say, let me go to Chippa and be the person, listen, I don't think, for me, I don't think that was a good idea. I think if he really wanted to make himself a better coach, I think he should have gone to a better team, because we all know that no matter how good you are, no matter, you can be the best coach in South Africa, go to Chippa, your contract is going to get terminated. There's no doubt about that.
But is it that not a stepping stone, Eddie, in terms of then, going from being a coach who was roped in just to, paper over the cracks to now being appointed a coach, shows progression? And is it not then just the next step that, okay, cool, I was called in to do a job by Chippa United, I can grow from here and then be taken seriously? Do you not think that him being appointed and roped in is a signal to say that this is a guy that can come into a club and lead them, obviously with results still to come?
Okay, did Chippa call Seema for him just to make Chippa play good football? Yes. Is he going to last long? We know that he's not going to last long. That's a fact. So for me, it is about, okay, he can go and then he can save them, which is okay. But then in the long run, is he going to survive there? Because listen, I want to put it out there. Norman Mapeza, the coach before Seema, is a very good friend of mine. And he told me exactly things that were happening there. And now I'm thinking about it, and now I'm looking at Seema, what he has done for Celtics, and is he going to survive there? And from what I heard, I don't think he is going to survive.
Hectic.
He might go there, play the best football, he might win games, but is he going to survive? That's my question. Yes, if you say it's a stepping stone, but I would say, okay, listen, why not another club that was better than Celtics? Maybe then he can prove now to say, okay, listen, from Celtic, this is what I can do. But from Celtic to a team that doesn't respect coaches, is yet to be seen.
It's sounding like Mr. Dinha is explaining a sideways move, Mazola.
Yeah, look, as Eddie mentioned, obviously he would have sort of gotten first-hand sort of account from Norman Mapeza, a very good coach, I might add. I mean, a coach, who's made history in his own native country in Zimbabwe, taking some of the less fancied sides into the CAF Champions League. I mean, there was a lot of excitement when Chippa landed the big fish like Norman Mapeza to come to PE and coach Chippa United. And we can, as I mentioned earlier, Lehloonolo becomes the 22nd coach in 8 years. We can go through that list. There are some top coaches on there. Mancoba Mngiti lasted 2 games, Rulani, okay, 1 game which was not his doing per se, in the sense that there was this coronavirus outbreak and he only really lasted a few months because of that. Clinton Larson, Eric Tinkler. I mean, you name them. Ernst Middendorf. I mean, it's some heavy weights on that list of 21 coaches before Seema arrives, and they didn't last. You had Chippa, telling all and sundry about how he had thought he'd landed his, say, Alex Ferguson with Den Malisela, who's also had numerous stints with Chippa United. I think the longest serving coach at Chippa is the late Roger Sikakane, and also only because him and Chippa were so close as friends, and also more to an extent, more like a family member or a brother than anything else. So maybe he was perhaps able to kind of challenge him a lot more than other coaches would be able to. And let's not forget, there are other external factors at Chippa. Chippa's got a lot of advisors as well. And I did a story in December 28 about some of the fractions within the club, where the chairman seems to be influenced and pulled in different directions by different people in different departments. And some of them, like Peter Kotrulis, have since left the club. So maybe things have changed. I don't know. But the fact that even after I did that story 2 years ago, there's been maybe 5-6 different coaches that have come through the door. So what does that tell you? So I can only wish Lehloonolo all the best and hope he knows what he's getting himself into. And look, he's a young talent, a South African coach that's looking to obviously still make his name. And yeah, to go to Chippa just almost feels like suicidal to his career, but you never know. He could, after 21 coaches, he could be the one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, 22nd time lucky. Who knows? That could be the actual saying. We've been getting it wrong this whole time. Jonty Mark, let's discuss what's happening locally as far as the COVID response. Obviously, teams now being allowed to train. Some are training, some aren't training. Who's in charge of making sure they're training? Who's the compliance officer? Whose remit is that? Is it the PSLs? Is it SAFA? There's so much on this one where there's still, as much as there's clarity, no clarity.
Yeah, we're crawling really towards a restart, in the sense that clubs have, as you mentioned, have started training again and have got clearance from the PSL. I think Cape Town City were the first, and then SuperSport. I just saw on Twitter that Stellenbosch have now said they can train. They've got clearance to train. So slowly clubs, I think Chiefs will train soon. Sundowns have apparently started training in a camp in Mpumalanga. They like to train behind closed doors usually. So I guess, we are getting back to it. I just think there's been a complete lack of clarity and communication from the league. I hate to harp on about it, but they've just still made no statement since middle of March. Well, no official statement. Occasionally Ivan Cause has spoken to the papers, and occasionally you get the whispers, and you get your insight from people who attend the Board of Governors meetings. But I mean, I think the league have shown a severe lack of leadership in this matter. And and I understand that it's unprecedented, and that obviously nobody saw any of this coming, and it's everybody's sort of a little bit off the cuff because we haven't handled a situation like this before. But I still think there could have been more communication and better communication. And there's obviously also been, these squabbles between SAFA and the PSL from the very beginning, when SAFA was sort of saying, level 1, we can only come back when we're at level 1. The PSL were like, well, again, not officially, but, they seem to think you could come back earlier. Then it was, the referees. Then now it's the compliance officer who is in charge. Is it the PSL? Is it SAFA? This internal squabbling between these two bodies, I don't think really helps the process moving forward. And I think you can even say it's delayed because there have been countless meetings and I think there's some caterer somewhere who's made a lot of money in sandwiches, but, we're still waiting for this thing to get over the line. Although I do think now they've committed to ending this league by the end of August. That's my understanding. By August the 30th. That's what they've told FIFA. So they've got to get it done. And then once all the teams start training, they or even before that, they need to come out with a date when they want the season to kick off and when they want it to all end. And if they can get it all done by the end of August, so the new season can start in October, then I think that's what they're aiming for. But again, I do think that the communication coming out of the league has been awful.
Mazola, I mean, you kind of made the clarion call on the weekend. They wanted to reminisce, and you said, hey, announce some dates, won't you? I mean, do you feel that there's any clarity regarding that? Are we going to see a light at the end of the tunnel? Or is it just a case of everyone looking to the person beside them, trying to figure out what's going on at the offices in Parktown?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. I mean, subsequent to my tweet about announcing the date, I then, obviously, I don't know if it was a reaction to my tweets or not. I then started getting a bit of information about, a planned restart and getting some dates, and I think I did a story later on that Saturday evening that apparently the South African Football Association have received a proposal from the league to kickstart the remaining fixtures as of from the 15th of July. That's when they would go into this bio bubble, and then subsequent to that, maybe within a short space of time, maybe July the 19th, around that date, then games can officially get underway. And as you've seen now, clubs have begun to go back to training, and it doesn't even seem like it's a staggered return. It seems like the clubs have called all the players, because the pictures that I've seen, it's most of the players arriving almost kind of like at the same time, though they are training in groups, but it is a couple of players at a time. And yeah, and I think over the weekend as well, we learned that Orlando Pirates, in fact, are out in Nelspruit on a 2-day camp already. How they've not announced that's beyond me. I honestly do not understand what the secrecy is all about. Like, I just don't get it. It's just so confusing.
Maybe Eddie can tell us, it's his former team. Why are they so
I mean, Eddie as a former Pirates captain can tell us what in the world is going on here, because I don't understand what the secrecy is all about. If you've got the compliance certificate and you've been given the green light to go into camp or train, why are you hiding it? Like, what's there to hide? You're not breaking rules. You're not breaking the law. Then make the announcement. Obviously, I had also learned that Kaizer Chiefs had gone into training on the weekend as well. They made their announcement today with a few pictures of Lebogang Manyama training on his own. But obviously, he was not on his own on the day. He might have taken pictures in isolation, but his teammates were there as well to start training. So you've got a number of teams, SuperSport, Bidvest Vets. We've seen the images coming through. I think Sundowns are also heading into camp this week as well. So look, I welcome announcements being made, because that means more announcements, more clubs training. That means we are approaching the official date of kickoff. But the secrecy, the veil of secrecy, is just so confusing. Like, it boggles the mind, really.
Eddie, any opinion as to why your former team would have been so silent or secretive about this matter. And, I've obviously spoken to these gentlemen quite plenty times as far as this topic is concerned. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it in terms of the veil of silence, let's call it, between SAFA and the PSL. SAFA to a lesser extent, to be fair, but the PSL has been super, super silent for the most part when it comes to their COVID-19 response.
Listen, I think for every club and every person that supports soccer, they all want to hear exactly what is going on. I mean, if the house is in order, then at least then we would hear when the league is going to resume and then end, and then when is the next season going to start. But these squabbles between these two bodies, it's not good even for the players themselves, because everybody wants to go, everybody wants to finish the league, everybody wants to know, are we going to take a rest, or are we still going to straight from the finishing the league and then we're going to go straight into pre-season? And as for Pirates, I mean, I was also surprised that they just decided to keep quiet. And we only finishing the season. This is the only remaining games. So why do you have to be quiet about it? It's not like you want to introduce new players, no. So it's just like everybody, like what everybody's doing. People need to understand what is going on, whether everything is right up to date, and then so that everybody, when we see that, we know that the game is about to be to start, and then when is the league going to end? But listen, we're just waiting. We just gonna keep on waiting until these two bodies have solved their squabbles.
The compliance officer, the issue around that, it being Michael Murphy or Dr. Thulani Ngwenya, what's the issue here? What's the issue here? And who should be in charge?
Yeah.
And, why are we back to where the minister was trying to get us away from, which is these two bodies being at loggerheads yet again?
Yeah, look, that's, I don't know if you saw my tweet yesterday when I was just dumbfounded about the fact that SAFA and the PSL are now bickering about who should be the compliance officer. I've seen the letter from the minister to SAFA about this whole compliance officer saga. And the minister is quite clear. SAFA is the governing body. Thereby, they make the calls with regards to the return of football. And remember, a few months ago, the minister asked for for them to sing in unison. To sing from the same hymn sheet about everything related to the restart. Because the minister was avoiding exactly what's happening now. Which is just confusing information. SAFA, along with when the two bodies combined, the Joint Liaison Committee combined, they appointed one compliance officer who would oversee the return of football. And that was Dr. Thulani Ngwenya from the South African Football Association. He is, if you like, the main man in terms of issuing compliance certificates. Thereby, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the PSL appointing its own compliance officer that can then liaise directly with clubs, but then the man who needs to give the green light in effect is Thulani Ngwenya, because he's the overall compliance officer. And to my understanding, they have not been working together as yet. I don't know if things changed to today, but when I did the stories over the weekend and even as of this morning, until I obviously saw the letter last night, as far as I could understand, they had not yet been working together. In fact, I don't think SAFA up until they got wind of it early last week after the BOG meeting, we're not really aware that the PSL had appointed its own compliance officer. So yeah, it's going to be, it's difficult because we all want football to return, but you have these two federations just going at it, and that is really to the detriment of our football.
Yeah, Jonty, it seems like there's a bit of a breakdown in trust, I mean, why duplicate the role? And if you are going to duplicate the role, not say that, listen, we'll take the lead from you guys at SAFA, but we're going to have our own guy just to kind of ratify or look over. It seems now that they want to restore these two centers of power by having a duplication of duty with Michael Murphy coming in, where you have a lawyer, kind of going up against the doctor. And so, is it because there's a lack of trust that SAFA will do what's in the best interests of the PSL, which is to get football back, or they might just get in the way of that happening? And that's why you have to bring your own person.
Look, it could be that the league feel like they need to speed up the process, so they brought in one of their own people to, because there has been an impression that you've got out of the PSL overall that they felt SAFA have been delaying the process for whatever reason. That they felt we should be getting back quicker, but the SAFA have been constantly going out and saying, no, we can't. First it was, we can't go back until level 1, then it was this, and then it was, they had to put this joint task force together. And obviously SAFA's claim as the federation in charge of football, that they should have the guy in charge, and that Tulani and Gwenya is that guy, is fair enough. But you do wish that they would just work together a bit better, and there would actually be more cohesion in the way they speak. You don't get the impression, even though they formed this task force, that they were ever really working in together, and you still don't get that impression when you see the squabbling over who should be the official compliance officer. It's like it's a bit like school children, really, isn't it? Arguing over who should have the sweetie, sort of thing. I mean, it just seems a bit immature. So I don't know. I think that obviously the process is slow anyway, because clubs have to spend quite a bit of money to do all the testing of all the players and staff. They've got to sanitize their training facilities. Then they've got to train. That's why I would I don't know. I have a little problem with starting the league on the 19th of July when it's, I don't want to look at my watch right now, but it's like 12 days away or something like that tomorrow. And if clubs haven't started training, or some have and some haven't, I mean, it took the Bundesliga and the EPL and things like that like a month to get their players up to speed. And are we risking injuries here? There's also, I've had a concern expressed to me that they feel like some of the clubs that maybe don't have the budgets of other clubs might try and cut a few corners in terms of testing players, and in terms of sanitizing their facilities, and in terms of sending all these certificates. And then what if you have an incident where you go into this bubble, but a team hasn't tested properly, and then you have an outbreak within the bubble? I know that Tulani and Gwenya has said himself that it's 99% as long as all the regulations are adhered to, that it's 99% certain that there won't be an outbreak. But what if procedure isn't followed? How do you, and I think that is where you need to have your sort of compliance hat on straight, and you need to be saying, we know what we're doing, this is the process, and this is what's happening with all the clubs. And I think there is a document in place which has all those regulations, to be fair. But whether the clubs will stick to them, whether they can be enforced, I wouldn't be 100% sure. And I don't think that squabbling.
Have they even read them, Jonty Mark? Have the clubs even read that compliance?
I don't even know. I mean, I got, there was a Zoom meeting with the BOG last week, and one of the reports back was that there were a lot of blank faces while this document was being on the Zoom call. There were a lot of kind of expressionless faces when this document was being read out. Perhaps as if, people were just not really going to adhere to it, or be able to, or I don't know. Because it's 60 to 100K. But I mean, somebody did also say to me, that the clubs have sort of been sitting around with these grants. They've still been getting their grants. They haven't had to travel to matches or book hotels out. And the PSL are covering the cost of, the bubble, supposedly. So if they're doing that, and the clubs haven't had to spend money on all these other things, surely they can spend a bit of money on doing the testing properly and getting everything in order. But there do seem to be concerns still about whether they will be able to do that, and that whether you'll be able to have a completely clear bubble when the season does kick off again.
Mr. Dinha, I mean, I'm sure you keep your ear to the ground as far as what's happening. There's these murmurings that the plan that's been received is better than some of the stuff overseas in terms of a plan. But with any plan, it boils down to its execution. Are you confident that we're going to get this one right? Because I'm starting to see a few fissures here in the strategic partnerships that should be happening to make sure this works properly. But like, we're discussing, there seems to be people who are willing to cut corners. I mean, we've been hearing stories of teams being training all this time. So how confident are you that we're going to get this one right as per this bubble?
It's quite a difficult one. I mean, I do agree with the gents, with Jonty and Mazola. Listen, I mean, talking in terms of mostly to the players, because remember, one, they are not training as a group. They are training, I mean, like the whole team, they are being like, training as a group. One group trains at this time and then the other one on a certain time.
Or so they say.
Or
so they say.
Exactly. Yes. And it really affects the players. And remember, this is not a preseason. We're about to finish the game. So coming back after a long layoff and, training at home, yes, it is okay, but it's not as much as you're training as a team. Because when you train as a team, remember, whatever the fitness that you have to do for now to finish the games, it's not the same as you do when it's pre-season. So now you need to decide, and remember, the age is too. Once a player reaches 35, 33, you're not going to train him as much as you train when he's 21, 22. So now there is not even time again to train all of them like that, because now you're avoiding injuries. Are you going to last the games? What's going to happen? Like for an example, Kaizer Chiefs, they're in for the league. So they need all their players to be on the same level.
Right.
But now, do they have the time to put everybody on the same level? No, it's not the same thing. Same applies with the Sundowns. So if they have trained earlier on, then we'll be talking a different story. But now, as Jonty said, listen, we have got 12 days for the league to resume. Are we going to see the best of the players? I doubt it.
Wow. I mean, that's a scary, when having spoken to all these coaches who insist that at a bare minimum, it must be a month. At a bare minimum, they're cutting it fine. It should be a month of preseason training. And now we're talking about 12 days.
Exactly.
I mean, it just sounds like we're on a roller coaster to nothing here, because, of the coaches, of the football brains, Coach Pizzo is another one who said it on Twitter. He's saying that you can see the players are tired after an hour of being in the first game back. We need the time. But as we've been saying, there seems to be no time, Jonty. I mean, there seems to be no time. Sorry, Mazola, this was for you. There seems to be not much time left, yet, full steam ahead. What's going on? It just seems like something's amiss. There's no strong idea that this thing is moving forward the way it should be.
Yeah. And I think all this confusion is what's also led to some teams sort of training behind closed doors as well. Or, sort of maybe even breaking the lockdown rules. I think a lot of teams might have even taken advantage of the first announcement by the minister that non-contact sport or contact sport can return to training in groups or in individual training. I mean, there were pictures circulating of SuperSport United players training at a park in Mamelodi, and the club was quick to say no, they were individually training, but they were wearing SuperSport gear and they were with other SuperSport players. So you begin to ask yourself questions. I know for a fact of a few clubs in the PSL that have been training long before the compliance officer came.
Given 12 days
exactly.
to try and warm up. I mean,
not true.
Season. I mean,
that's
why wouldn't you then
exactly.
take advantage?
Exactly. So, the reality is that teams have been training. Some might have been left behind in that they waited for the league and they did not want to break the rules or the law and stuff like that. So they will be left behind. But some have caught up. And I was told from this, I don't know if Jonty got the same feedback as well, that when the BOG was held, clubs are actually on edge. They want to start training, they want to start playing and finish off the season, because their finances are at risk, their grants are at risk. So the sooner you are back on the pitch, the better for the clubs financially. But the issue here is that those chairmen that are sitting in those board of governor meetings, they are not the players.
That's true. That's a very good point that Mazola ends with there, Jonty, that this strain, this lack of preparation, this is all going to take its toll on the people who are supposed to give us the spectacle for the next 6 or so weeks. But I feel like we're going to be hearing about injuries and, if not injuries, infections and all sorts of things, because it just seems like no one has led. And that lack of leadership has led to everyone just doing their own thing.
Yeah, I think there needed to be a more coherent plan, and there hasn't been, and clubs have been training on their own, and it's a bit chaotic. I do think that, as Mazola mentioned, I haven't heard this from the POG meeting or anything, but I know when I spoke to Kevin Hunt a long time ago, a while ago, he was like, whatever gap they give us, we must just get on with it, because we want to finish the season and we want to start the next season, and whatever the gap is, it must be dealt with. And I guess, there probably will be more injuries. I think obviously the 5 substitution rule will help in terms of being able to use your squad more, and that seems to have worked across the globe. And I think that, they'll just have to get on with it. It's not ideal, and I do worry about player injuries. And then obviously you've got the situation as well where clubs you've probably touched on this before, but where clubs haven't really looked after their players, in the sense that some players have just been allowed to leave, and you've got players who've left before, like Maluleka, who won't be able to win the title or finish off the season with Chiefs. So that's not ideal either. But they've been determined to get the season finished, so I guess whatever happens, I guess they're going to get on with it. It'll remain to be seen. Hopefully there won't be any problems. Hopefully everything will be clear, and we'll have this beautiful, healthy bubble, and we can kick off at least, if not the 19th of July, at least by the beginning of August, and get the season done, and then move on to the next season, which is supposed to be starting in October. And so I'm hopeful.
Yeah, you're hopeful. So am I.
I'm also worried.
Cool,
Yeah,
Thank you very much. We're out of time, unfortunately. That's my alarm going off, stating that we're out of time. I'd like to say thanks, gents, for your impressions and for your thoughts. Eddie, it was really good to have you on. We'll